Hey, welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this week's episode, I just want to remind everybody that you can find us at fromtheshadowspodcast.com. From there, you can go to all of our social media, all the crazy stuff that goes on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Snap. No, there's no Snapchat. Whatever all the stuff is that we're on, go check us out. Give us a follow and engage in the shenanigans. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can hit the contact button, send me an email, send me your story, whatever you want to tell me, and hopefully you can come on and be a guest on the show, like this week's guest. So before we bring him on, though, I also want to remind you, if you want to get a hold of me personally outside of the podcast stuff, you can just find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram and shoot me a message. But other than that, thanks for coming and hanging out with us again. And with that being said, I want to introduce, this is a special introduction. I hope I don't screw it up. Kyle from Oregon, also known as Sacred Mountain, which is his Chippewa name. Correct? Did I get that right?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And if you guys knew how big this dude was, you know why they call him Sacred Mountain, because he's a big gentleman, and and that's a kind of a cool name. How did you get that name?
So there's a ceremony you go through. It's a standard ceremony, I think, for most tribes. I think things are a little different, but the rough of it is like your appointed medicine man, whatever his dreams are for the week after the ceremony, ends up becoming your name for life, essentially. So that's what mine ended up being, and it fits me well.
So at what point in your life do you receive that name? Like at birth, or is it later on?
Some do it at birth. I found I would say, like religion a little bit later when I was like 14 or 15. I really got into the sacred ways and, carrying on my culture and a dying breed kind of thing. So mine was about 16 years old. I was given my name from my medicine man, Alan Demaray, and Jazz Young Bear. There's some pretty, I would say, big people in the world that I'm affiliated with. But yeah, they were the ones who given me my name. So
okay, so now I'd have been super impressed if you were like just born and like this dude's gonna be like ginormous.
right, yeah.
We're gonna call him the Sacred Mountain. So
Yeah,
but no, that's
right.
cool. That's a cool. It's neat that the tie into your culture and your family's lineage there, and to kind of understand that and get to be part of that. That's kind of cool. So
Absolutely.
so for everybody, Kyle sent me an email, great email with some great stuff on it, and I'm going to let him talk about some of the stuff in the email he sent me, because kind of blew my mind a little bit. So Kyle, start from the beginning and tell us about this journey of paranormal stuff that has gone on with your family.
So to preface everything, I am native, like I'm over a quarter or so, still counts. But ever since I was young, I've had a lot of just sensitivity to things, I would say, not in like a weird way or even necessarily in a bad way, but I can remember being 10 years old and seeing things out of the corner of my eye and going, I'm not sure, that was a little odd, but I've always had a very attentive personality, I guess, ever since I was young. Most of my family is like law enforcement and military, so it comes with the territory. So, but I guess I'll start for your channel. I think a lot of it's like Dogman content and werewolf, whatever you prefer to call it. But my grandfather and grandmother had 14 kids. Like I would say step grandmother and grandfather, but like married in. They had 14 kids, so it was quite a bustling household when I was young. And this is Canadian border, Dunseith, North Dakota. It's a very small town, probably 20 miles directly from the Canadian border checkpoint. So, any which way you go is either like farmland or like wooded, area kind of style. And my grandfather, his name is Edward, he had told not everybody, but he told me at some point he had a Dogman encounter. And this encounter, I think, made a lot of sense for him in the end, and I'll tell the story. He woke up in the morning. My grandpa was a hellraiser. He was, at the bars, drinking, partying, smoking, womenizing, you name it. He was doing it. And he said he woke up one morning and he walked out to stack wood. In North Dakota, you got to cut wood, stack wood, wintertime. That's just the way it is. And he had a fifth of vodka in his jacket pocket, and his cigarettes and whatever else was on him. And he said he went out on the porch, and this house is butted up against like I wouldn't say like the North Dakota wilderness because we have prairie, it's very flat and hilly, but there is some areas where there's a lot of trees compacted where, farmers have planted for windbreaks and such like that. So this particular area, this house was butted up against, this wooded area, which always kind of gave everybody just like a weird feeling, right? You just have like that sixth sense about you that something maybe watching you or something in there. But Grandpa Ed walked out and lit up his cigarette, and he's looking off of the porch and takes a drink of his drink, whatever he's doing. And he says he looked out into the wooded area, and as he caught his eyes, he seen something black in the brush. Well, when he stopped, whatever it was stood up, and it was like a Dogman. In our culture, it's called a Rugaroo, right? Louisiana culture. And he says it stood up and it just stared at him. And my grandpa's not an easy one to startle. He's quite a large guy as well. So he's stuck. And I heard it on another podcast. The best word for it was like they were rooted. Once they seen it, it was it's fear. It's a culmination of a lot of things, I think, but it rooted him. He stopped. And his only thought was, either I can try to get back inside, I can try to run where I can. But my grandpa said he took about 3 steps, and by the time he took his 3rd step, this thing was already on him, up on top of him, very close, I would say 5-6 feet. And it just stood and stared at him. Now, he didn't give a huge explanation of what he looked like, but a Rugaroo, a werewolf, I think we all understand what those pretty much look like. He said it was just very dark, very, German Shepherd face style, and fast, very fast. Claws, big claws. And my grandpa decided, all I can do is try to create distance. So the first encounter where he stopped, he took another, 4 or 5 steps, whichever way he moved, it followed him. And I've heard other people say this as well, but they think it's some people say it's spiritual, some people say it's physical. He felt like it was trying to tell him something. So every time he would move, it would just straight for him every single time. And the last time he decided to try to move from it and kind of accepted his fate, I would guess you would say, is he just stared at it, and they stared at each other. He said for minutes, they just sat there and stared. And my grandpa got the feeling that this thing had lived behind where they lived. And from all of the things my grandfather had done, he felt like it was telling him it was time for him to change his ways, his life. And the only way he said he felt like this thing might calm down is if he, like renounced whatever bad he was doing at the time. And I guess Grandpa pulled out his bottle and he poured it out and threw the bottle. He threw his cigarettes down and stepped on them and smushed them. And this thing backed up and it walked backwards back into the bush and went back pretty much into the same spot. But from that day forward, my grandfather never touched a drink. He never touched cigarettes. I've never seen him, even at celebrations where everybody's hooting and hollering, does not partake. He wouldn't go in the woods after that. And being from my culture and where I'm from, that's kind of a big thing, is being a part
Mm.
of Mother Earth and stuff. So it was just a very interesting, insightful, and of course I'm a kid and I'm playing in this area. So do I want to go in the woods? Do I not want to? So that was kind of the gist of his story to me.
Wow. And now does that, so, so their culture, refers to it,
Hmm.
has a name for it, the Rugaroo, or
Yep.
it, what is the typical place in your culture that being takes? Like, what is it a sign of? Is it, is it thought of as something that's going to hurt you, or what?
Hmm.
What does it mean?
I think it's like you said, like it's a sign, and in my culture, like owls and eagles and hawks, they all have different kind of signs when you see them. But that one, I think, is a particular one that's more of you know either you change your ways, or you know essentially it's just going to take you out, right? And from the size of them, from the strength of them, um, and I don't really know the reasoning behind why it did what it did, but what I got from it was I think it lived in the woods behind my grandfather, and it probably had heard a lot of his transgressions, a lot of the things he'd done wrong, you know,
Hmm.
hooting and hollering, hell raising, drinking, and I think it just checked him, honestly. And a lot of people, I feel like in my culture, um, end up with something of that sort, you know, at some point or another,
I
something
get you. Okay.
spiritually.
I get you. Like they come. There's a day of reckoning for them,
Right.
where,
Absolutely.
and whatever is that
Hmm.
entity or that being or whatever
Hmm.
that kind of wakes them up or says this is your last chance. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not necessarily a dogman creature, but it could be
Right.
anything. Now, did he did he convey to you that he actually felt physically scared, like this thing could just take me out if I don't do this, or did he think it was going to go away and something would happen later on?
From what I got out of it is he felt fear in the beginning, and as it went further on, in a span of 5 to 7 minutes, maybe tops, probably less than that. Our adrenaline hits, and I think everything just slow motions from that point. But
Yeah, yeah.
he said it was scary at first, but as he tried to move away to create distance, he felt like, number one, it wasn't going to back off of him until he figured out what's the message here. And like I said, he felt like it was trying to convey some type of reasoning to him. And a lot of people think it's a telepathic thing, but body language is a huge communicator for everybody. I think you can kind of get the gist of things. But yeah, he said it started as fear and it ended as a communication.
Now, was he 100% sure that your grandma was not behind this?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Like,
With that many kids.
ah, like you wonder, like you almost wonder if it's something she could manifest
Sure.
to come and talk to him. I
Could
I mean,
be.
not knowing anything about the culture, but know it, but maybe
Yeah.
it's something that she could,
Yeah.
manifest, like, I need some help
Hmm.
here. Well, the spirits or the elders
Yeah.
or whatever however you want to describe it, send me some help. And
Yeah.
that's, I don't know, that's although her dressing up in a costume and scaring the crap out of him would probably work just as
That'd be great.
that would
But
be.
you're probably right. There probably was a plea for help at some point, and
Hmm.
maybe she was praying outside towards the woods, and something hurt her. But I
Hmm.
definitely believe in his story. It was just something that struck me as, my grandpa Ed's not one. He's a military guy, and he's not one to, you know,
Well,
lie.
it's one
So
thing to say, "Hey, kids, don't go out and play in the woods. The
yeah,
Rugaroo is out there,"
yeah,
but to go into detail where
yeah,
something was standing face to face and not letting you, that's a whole different level of just telling a story to get kids
right,
scared or whatever.
Right.
Wow. Um, did your, you know, did your dad have anything to say about that? About what your grandpa said, or
Um, so my dad kind of has the same story that I have. My grandpa didn't really go into exact detail. It was more, I think, of what was the message in the end. You
Mhm.
know, the sign. Why am I dealing with this right now? Kind of thing. So that's what we think happened. Now, in that same area, there's a road. It's called Jackrabbit Road, and
Okay.
this road is it's probably a mile north of where this first encounter happened. And my aunt, her name is Carly, was with a man, and they drove out to the road and parked and were doing whatever they did. And you know, a mile north from where the first place happened, she said they were in the back, you know, doing whatever young people do, and something began to lift the back of the car. And it's pitch black. There's no lights. This is a dirt road that goes from town to town by the Canadian border. It's wooded on both sides. So there's really nothing for you to see unless you have your lights on. And this is before like you could turn your cell phone light on and I can see. And she said her and this guy freaked out. They didn't know what was going on. They're yelling, they're trying to figure it out. And they turn the lights on, they see nothing. And whatever it was, by the time they got into the driver's seat, it was lifting up the car enough to where when they pressed the gas pedal, the rear wheels were spinning in the air. The car was not moving. So eventually it dropped the car and it bounced and they continued forward and they took off and went. But that's another story in kind of that same area. There's a lot of those stories.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
That's like out of a movie. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? That's like
Why would it pick the car up? I don't know. You know?
which is funny. I just was told working on working on a script, and I was
Mhm.
told to go watch part of this movie called 30 Days of Night.
Okay.
And in that, this sheriff are trying to get away, and this group of
Yeah.
vampires are picking up the back of
Nice.
I'm
Yeah.
like, holy smokes, did you just
Right.
rewatching what I was watching?
Yeah.
Wow, that would be terrifying. No matter what you were doing in the back seat,
Right. Yeah.
that would be like, okay, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
scared. Talk about being scared straight. Holy smokes.
Yeah, and in that area, you know, a lot of the elders and the people who just live there, they've, you know, not all of them, but a lot of them have had, whether it be a Rugaroo or an experience or, you know, paranormal. There's just, you know, hopefully my dad comes on here and gives you his accounts, but you know, he was a police officer for that area and he's seen a lot more as well. So
Yes, I'm excited at the prospect of having him on. So we'll keep working
yeah,
on. We'll work on it. Make sure. It happens.
right,
So
yeah,
okay, so you grow up hearing this story, but
yeah.
what else is going on then to you as you're growing up? Then
So I lived in the town south from where the Dogman encounter and my grandfather and my aunt had, and we had moved into this duplex, and it's like surrounded by a big field, and you know, weird things begin to happen, and you know, one of the things that was really striking for all of us was no matter what you did, and of course it's my bedroom, right? My bedroom, you know, I would go to bed and I would see like red eyes in my closet, or I would see shadows and I would hear weird noises and nobody would believe me. You know, this went on for months. To preface all this, it went on for months. Nobody believed me. You know, something's going on in here. I don't like it. I want my door left open. You know, there's a huge long dark hallway that led back to my room. And what I started doing was is I would take my huge dresser and I would place it in front of my door at night. And this dresser is like huge, loud, right? To move it is like you're waking everybody up. And that was my thought is maybe if I move this and I keep my door open and my dad keeps his door open, maybe, you know, maybe if something moves, I'll at least have somebody to call upon. You know, my dad
Hmm.
being a cop, he was always my like superhero. So, you know, dad, come help me, you know. So I would move my dresser before I would go to bed, and I would wake up. And we did this many times, but my dresser would go back to the same spot. It would be moved out of the way of the door, and my door would be closed. And this happened, I can't tell you how many times.
So you would literally put the dresser to hold the door open,
Yeah.
and geez, not only would they move the dresser, close the door, and you never woke up, never heard it.
Nope. I never woke up to it. You know, I was a kid playing hard, I'm sure, but many, many times I put that dresser in front of that door and I would wake up and it would be right back where it was supposed to be. And I would ask my dad, you know, maybe, you know, my dad had a lady over or something and wanted the door closed. And my dad goes, I have my own door. Why do I need to move your door? Right. Um, so, you know, we had a big family and a lot going on and a lot of people coming in and out. And, you know, you'd be in the living room and my door would be open and it would slam itself just all by itself. We did the hinges, we did the locks, we did you name it, we did it to that door. And it seemed to be connected to my room the most. Um, but it would slam itself all the time. My cousins would come over. You know, they ran out of the house screaming and swore they wouldn't come back. Um, they had an experience where they went to go turn the water on in the bathroom and the water had turned on before they went to touch it. And my cousin would not come back in the house. Another story is my uncle Mark, big construction guy, very strong guy from Seattle area. He came out and we had family over, and he said something had peered at him through our kitchen window, and it had looked at him on the couch, and it scared a grown 40-year-old man so bad that he screamed. He got up, he grabbed his keys and his bag and left and would not come back in the house. We called him at my grandparents' house probably 5 minutes later, like, dude, what's going on? He says, I seen something or somebody looking at me through your window. And he goes, I will not come back to your house. So all of these things are going on at this house.
What
And
what did he think? So, like, what did he think's looking at him through the? I mean, couldn't it just have been a person, or
he
he
said
didn't?
he said it looked like somebody was like ghostly apparition style peering at him through the house. This is the middle of the night, like 11 o'clock at night. Um, and it's, you know, there's really nothing around us. It's a very small town. You know, there's duplexes, of course, but yeah, it scared him so bad he wouldn't come back. So that's part of that.
Good Lord.
And you know, my dad being a cop had went and checked, went and looked. There's no footprints. There's no nothing. Um, so a lot of things happened like that. My dad had like a huge stereo, and it was the old stereos you'd have to walk up to and turn up manually. Well, this stereo, when he had it on or off, would turn itself on and it would crank itself slowly all the way to max for some reason, and it would do it all the time. Um, Footsteps, we would hear footsteps through the house all the time. One of my dad's stories from this house is he had came home, and my dad worked nights, so he would get home at like 3 o'clock in the morning from working as a, you know, deputy sheriff shift. And I remember this vividly as a child. I was asleep in my bunk bed, and my dad had jumped on me and he had hugged me and was telling me, "Oh, I love you, my boy," whatever, this and that. And my dad's not one to, we're kind of a rough and tough kind of group of guys. We're not very much huggy, lovey-dovey kind of guys. And so that was really odd to me. I woke up and it startled me. So I'm kind of freaked out and I'm like, what's going on here? I love you too, you know. My dad never told me what happened until I turned 17 years old. And, you know, when you have like a memory come back and you're like,
Hmm.
what happened there? So I asked him and he goes, he goes, geez, you just kind of jogged my memory. And he goes, that night when I walked into your room, your sheet was floating flat above your body. And I jumped and I hugged you because I didn't know what else to do. And he goes, everything's going on in the house. He goes, I walk in, it's the middle of the night, it's 3 a.m, and your sheet is flat above your body. So that was also, pretty terrifying. Yeah.
It's so, like, what did he think was going on? Like, and what was, I mean, I mean, my thing is always just move,
Right.
even though
Absolutely.
I know, I
Yeah.
mean, especially, unless you I understand when people buy houses and stuff like that.
Hmm.
If you're in a duplex, you're
Yeah.
probably renting,
Yeah.
just move, you know?
Yeah. And, my dad was quick to dismiss a lot of stuff. Oh, the water turned on, he would laugh and this and that. Oh, you didn't see nothing. You know, After that night, his tune changed, his demeanor changed. And being a kid without him telling me, I noticed something was a little bit different. And, you can move, but in a lot of cases, things tend to follow you along, and we weren't really the type of people to just say, tuck our tail and run. So, it was kind of like a famous place. And even now, I'd love to go back and see that. But, another great story is I was playing basketball with my cousin Kenny. We came back in, and there's a long hallway all the way back to my room. I rolled my basketball and I made sure it stopped because my dad was like, clean freak, military, police, it's got to be in its spot. So I rolled my ball so it went underneath my bunk bed and it stopped. I grabbed my cousin and me both a popsicle. I opened the screen door and the ball came rolling back out to us at the door. I can't explain it. I watched the ball stop. It was in my room. It rolled all the way back, probably like a 30-foot hallway all the way back out. That's another one there. It's terrifying, even to this day,
Because that's a sign of that's like an intelligent thing.
Yes.
Okay, that is something making the decision. I'm going to roll this ball
Yep.
back towards him to get your attention, not the residual hauntings. When people tell me, they see, those would be unnerving to see the
Right.
same scene over and over again. But when something's interacting with you, I don't know how you could really handle that.
It's a little different. Yeah. You know, um, my dad had another instance where he walked into the bedroom and um, my mom was in there, my stepmom. And he said, "Oh, what's going on? What are you doing?" And she just like looked at him and he was like, "Okay." So he went to like the fridge for a beer or whatever. And he got to the kitchen and she was standing in the kitchen. And he can't explain it, And he was like, "Weren't you just in the bedroom?" He was like, "No, I've been out here cooking this whole time." She was a big cook. That's what she did. So that's another one. Um,
Which I've heard those stories before too, where the mimic,
yeah,
they're called mimics basically,
right.
and whatever it is mimicking somebody else in the house,
Hmm.
and oh my gosh, and they interact to a certain point,
Right,
like that mimic looking at him probably couldn't say anything, but probably
right.
is enough to like, golly.
And my dad being a police officer and all of his friends are police officers, you know, there's many experiences from credible people. I was just the one who slept in the room, you know. So the door slamming itself, the water's turning on by itself, people are peering into the windows, things are mimicking, the balls are rolling. All of these things are compounding, and it's starting to affect me as a kid to
Mm.
where I'm like, I don't want to be in my room. I don't want to sleep in there, And my dad was very adamant that I slept in my own room, being like a 10, 11-year-old kid, right? You're not sleeping in my bed. And being 6'7", I've never been a small kid, so to sleep in your parents' beds is quite a nuisance. So it got to the point where I was so scared that he would have to check my room with his gun before I would go sleep in it. And that's how afraid I was. Um, so all of these experience came on, and my dad said, "That's enough." And this is before I had my native name and um, a part of the culture, really, or anything. My dad worked with a Vietnam veteran, awesome dude. His name was Tony Sims. That's a whole other story. His wife, Mrs. Sims, was a medicine woman, very holy, very too good do woman. And they contacted her, and I remember they had made me leave the house, and they made me go to my grandparents, where the werewolf thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, good switch. No, but they made me leave, and my dad said that they stood out like by their cars, and she went in alone. And she went in alone, and it's like sage, sweet grass. We burn that stuff to cleanse our house. That's
Mm-hmm.
just what we do in our culture. And he said he could start to smell the sage, and he started getting this really weird feeling. And so 20, 30 minutes goes by, and they're all watching my dad, a couple of his friends, and my stepmom. And she comes out and she goes, "Everything is done." And he goes, "What do you mean everything is done?" And she goes, "Everything is taken care of. It's going to be okay from here out." And she goes, "But you need to come with me, and we need to go sit down, and we need to talk." The medicine woman, Mrs. Sims, had said that, my dad and his friends were very loud, and it didn't like the noise. It wanted peace and quiet. And when my dad's stereo, his guitars, his friends, the parties, all of that stuff, it bothered it, and it began to lash outward. And that's why it slammed the door. That's why it would, the music was up, it would turn the music all the way up. If people were over, it would mess with people. Um, and that's what she got from the spirit um, that was in my room. And he asked, "Well, what was its intent?" And she goes, that's where it is. She goes, "From what I feel that this thing told me is that where your son sleeps, his body is buried underneath in the ground." And she says, "I have his name, and his name is Morning Star. He was bludgeoned in the head on the way home from a gathering, and he died, and he is buried underneath where your son sleeps." Interesting enough, for the biblical folks, Morning Star is also another name for the devil. So that was the end of it. The door never slammed itself. The feeling lifted. Nothing else ever happened in that house from there on. But that is the story of the Dunseith House duplex that we lived in.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
That's some crazy. So how much longer did you guys live there after that?
I think we stayed there for another couple of years, and there was never anything ever again. Nothing ever happened again,
Wow.
which was crazy, right? We were like, "Yeah, right." I'm going to
Yeah.
go to bed tonight and move my dresser, and it's going to be right back where it's supposed to be. And we tested it all. The door never moved again when it wasn't supposed to. Nothing. So,
That's amazing. That's amazing. So whatever she did,
yep,
they came to an agreement and it worked.
yep. She told him it was time for you to pass. You need to pass on. You need to move forward, right? You're stuck here in this house because of the way you passed away, and it's time for you to move forward and go to the light. So we think that that's what she did.
More so than that's more so what the spirit did than just being like, okay, they're not that loud to, like
Yeah,
concede, conceding that you guys are behaving a little bit better. It probably did
right.
pass on. Okay. No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense. And
Hmm.
I mean, when you look at it from that way, I mean, who wants to hang around here if you
Right.
have a
Yeah.
chance to go
Yeah.
somewhere else, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, why would you want to be co- continually tortured by loud music
Yeah.
and people arguing and screaming,
Yeah.
whatever?
Yep.
Like, just like, oh, get me out of here, you know? I,
Yeah.
t- I totally get that.
And the sense of dread that we had with all of this stuff going on, person after person, experience after experience, we were under the interpretation of this thing is intelligent, it's powerful, it can move things, and it's doing things to lash out. So our instinct was like, this cannot be good. It can't be. And she even asked it. She told us later on that she asked if it meant to do us harm, and it said no. It just did not like the way that we lived our life.
You're just some grouch,
Yeah,
some
just
grouchy
some
dude,
some
some
grouch,
grouch.
morning star.
It's like,
And
wow.
to this day, I'll tell you, I am very hesitant to tell people my stories because obviously I've seen
Mhm.
this and I've seen that. I've seen shadows of the corner of my eyes. Some people look at you like you're crazy, and then some people are open to
Mhm.
listening to it. But the people I've told oftentimes are like, I've never heard anything like that. And that's just one place I've been. I have, more I'll share here as we go. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because what happens is a lot of times people don't get those answers as to
no.
what's going on, and I think that's kind of a blessing for you guys to get
Mhm.
that answer and know that it wasn't a demonic spirit, that was really trying to hurt you. It was just
Right.
some guy that met an unfortunate end and
Yep.
was like, I just want to get some sleep. Been here for eternity.
Right.
I don't want,
Yeah.
jeez. So, okay, so you move out of this place, then what?
I move out of this place. Sorry, I want not to interrupt.
No, no, that's
I
okay.
I move out of this place, and my mother and my father are split. They're divorced. I
Hmm.
go to North Dakota to be with my dad. I go back to Oregon to be with my mom during like the school year. And I go back to Oregon, and you know, she had gotten rid of that spirit, but I always felt like, it not that it followed me, but I've always felt like it had just like watched out for me in a way, because it kind of watched me grow up in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
through
Oh,
being
yeah.
scared and stuff. But I've always felt like it was kind of like with me in a way, not in a bad way. But my mom was very unstable when I was a kid. Had been through a lot herself, was adopted, and really didn't have a good base. Mentally, physically, she just couldn't put it together. And she moved us to a town called Corvallis, Oregon.
Mm,
And to this day, there's a house there that we lived in that I'm afraid to step into. Um,
really?
and we moved there, and for some reason, we got this 3-level house with a backyard. It's got a huge basement, and she got it for cheap. And we're renting it, and the age-old story, right? Go ahead, move on in, pay the bills, right?
You know why you got it for cheap? It
Yeah.
sounds
So
too good to be true.
yeah, so I would have weird dreams in this house. My brother seemed really affected. My brother had behavioral issues, but at this house, it just really amplified what he had going on. And for my mom, not being a particularly solid parent at the time, it was rough. It was really rough. And this house had a basement that I've never seen another basement like it. It was segmented off with concrete walls, or like old rock wall in
Okay.
the
Okay.
bottom,
Okay.
and the windows were like tinted like red, like like orangish red. So when the sun would come in during the day, it would be like orange tinted light, which was really odd. So anytime you would go down there, you just kind of get an odd feeling. And I remember my mom had rented a washer and dryer from Rent-A-Center. So we finally had a washer and dryer. And this is around the time of like 9/11. I remember it was like
Okay.
a week before this happened. And I'm like 12 or 13 years old. Everybody would be gone by the time it was time for me to go to school. My school started a little later, so it wasn't far away. I washed my own clothes, I got myself ready, and I would go walk to school. This particular morning, I woke up and I remember seeing the news with all the 9/11, reels and the footage and stuff. The TV was pretty much always left on. And I went to go get my stuff out of the washer and dryer. And as I went up the stairs out of the basement, I got this really odd feeling. And I turned around, and the only way I can explain the noise that was in front of me was like a lion was roaring directly in front of my face. This scared me so bad that I ran outside and I stared at that house until my brother and sister came home from lunch, which was like 3 hours later. I just stood and stared. It scared me that bad. I turned around, and the decibel level, the volume level in front of my face was so loud that it shook me completely, full body vibration. I don't know what it was, but I definitely felt like it was not good. And I'm alone at home. And here's the weird thing: is sometimes you're creeped out. Sometimes you kind of have the EBGBs. I'm in like, I got to get to school. I got to go. And I remember my mind frame that morning, seeing the TV and everything. I really didn't have that type of feeling. It was a very, it just turned on me. So I don't have an explanation for what it was, but whatever roared in my face that morning was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. And to this day, basements and stuff like that, I'm very hesitant to deal with. So
Yeah, here's what I here's what I can't stress enough is, I'm a big dude, but
yeah,
you're bigger than
sure.
me.
Yeah,
Okay. And when you're the big dude
yeah,
and you're the scared dude,
yeah.
it's it
Something's wrong.
it should be a warning to everybody else that
Yes.
there's some stuff like
Yep.
I can't like do you feel like that was a demonic thing
That
happening or
I do. That one I do. I The intent of whatever it was very alarming. A lot of the times I'll talk about this, and it's such a like a I would say like terrifying, but also traumatic. It like almost brings tears to my eyes. We're talking now, and I'm good, but there's a lot of times
yeah.
I think about it, and it was such a surreal moment that you're not expecting, right? Who expects that in their life, right? And
No.
as I'm standing there at the stairs and this thing is doing that, my brain went back to like all the other paranormal stuff that had happened to me that I've kind of locked up and put away. But I don't think it was the same thing. I think it was definitely something different. Um, but I do think that I am very sensitive to certain things like that. A lot of the time they say that, the dark is attracted to the light, right? So
Well,
that was,
I think what I also think what happens is these spirits or entities, most people don't pay any attention to them. Okay.
no,
Even if they are doing something that would warrant your attention, people just don't pay attention to them. And when they feel it's like that little kid who's like, listen to me, I got something to say. And as
yeah,
soon as they got an audience and they know somebody's listening, you never know what's going to come out.
yeah,
Okay.
right, yeah,
And it's almost like an entity like that is like, oh, I've been waiting
yep,
to scare somebody or to scream,
yeah,
and this kid can hear me. I know
hmm
he's going to be able to, and that's what it seems to me like when they
yeah,
definitely sense that. It's like the movie. I watch a TV show, Ghosts,
Yeah.
and those guys, the ghosts are all in this house,
Right.
and the one lady can see them, and
Yep.
then the ghosts are surprised then when somebody else comes along that can see, like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, you can see, you're a ghost.
Yeah.
And I think I got to be honest, I think that probably happens
Yeah.
more times than what people think. Like, especially in places that have been there, or land that, like you said, that guy met his demise on that land. I
Yep.
just think there's places like that where there's whole other dimensions of stuff going
Yeah.
on, and
Absolutely.
we're just in our little dimension.
Yeah.
And geez, so like what on earth happened? Like, how do you resolve that, or do you not?
I don't think I ever really resolved it. It scared me to a point of there's no understanding it. There's no, who are you going to tell stuff about that to? My mom's not solid. My dad's in North Dakota. Obviously I've been through stuff with my dad, but he's also one who's quick to dismiss. My brother is with me, but he's off the hinges. So really, I'm pretty much, alone in this matter. And, you know, I never went in that basement again. I refused to go into it. I closed the door every time I was there. But it took a toll on my family, I definitely think. And I think it affected, my mom and my brother and my sister were around. And I think it, like you said, right? Some people are sensitive to it, some people aren't, or maybe just don't pay attention to it. But I think it affected me the most. And I slept with my mom in that house till we moved out of it. I would not sleep anywhere else. And she worked nights a lot of the time. So a lot of the time I went to bed thinking, man, I hope I don't hear that again. But
It well, you also wonder though if the mental state that your mom and your brother were in
sure,
fed into something that was
I'm
there
sure.
too.
Yeah.
Wow, that's terrible to have to go through that stuff as a kid like that,
Yep.
and do it pretty much alone.
Yeah.
Jeez. So what else? What else happened? What else has happened along the way?
So, I have the house in North Dakota, the duplex that gave me and I have stories before that too, where, you know, uh, I'll kind of revert back, but my grandmother broke her leg when I was like 8 years old. This is before. And this is in Eugene, Oregon, where the Ducks play. And she broke her leg. My grandfather runs a bread route. So when he left for the bread route at like 2 or 3 in the morning, my grandmother would need meds. She would need water. She would need this and that. So I would go up there and lay on the other side of the bed till she, needed her pain medicine or whatever else. I would get it for her and help her out. And this particular night, morning, whatever you want to call it, my grandpa left. He came and got me. I went upstairs. They sleep in like pitch black. And I hadn't had any experiences yet, but this is kind of like where it began. And they had a balcony, a really nice like duplex, again a duplex, but they had a really nice place, and they're well-to-do off people. There's a balcony that is attached to their like second floor room, and I remember laying in bed and I couldn't fall asleep, and my grandma's over here and she's passed out, and I seen there's like a light peering in through their like glass slider door, and I seen a shadow appear in front of the door, and it flowed onto the carpet and up in front of the bed and stood in front of the bed. And I would like watch like vampire stuff when I was a kid or whatever, and I yelled to my grandma, "Grandma, there's a vampire in the room." But she woke up and was all startled and freaked out, and she's like, "Oh, you're just having a bad dream and this and that." But I remember laying there like wide awake. I couldn't sleep, and seeing this thing float as a shadow from the door to the carpet, come across the carpet, and then come up in front of the bed. Um, and as an 8-year-old kid, right, I freaked out immediately. So that was kind of another experience I had.
And that was there was no, like, that house didn't seem haunted or anything. It's just that one, like, I mean, do you feel like when you think back to that, and then you go to the duplex, and even knowing that the duplex had a specific entity tied to it, though,
Yeah.
do you feel like there's always something hanging out, like, that is just, a
Mhm.
light switch away from showing itself to you?
You know, in all honesty, to this day, I feel that way a lot of the time. But I don't feel it as in a such of fear like anymore. You know,
Hmm.
I practice traditional Native American medicine and stuff like that. So I've I would say graduated the like fear part of it.
Hmm.
Um, the way it was explained to me is our ancestors are very curious beings. They're also very they like to laugh, right?
They're
They're just like we are.
they're
They're
mischievous.
mischievous, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And a lot of the times they're just curious or want to pop in and say something. And for us, it's scary because what we don't know often scares us a lot of the time. Um, so yeah, you're right. There is a lot of times where I'll be at a basement door and I'm like, I don't know, but I'll tell you this: I can go to a lot of houses, and I'll tell you, by the time I walk in your front door, I will not step any further if I feel like something's off.
Wow. Because that's not an ancestor being curious. That's something
Yeah,
something.
very rarely have I done that, by the way, like not walked into somebody's house.
So
But
do you give them a heads up and say, "Hey,
not
look,"
really,
you just
right?
you
What am
just
I
let
supposed
them,
to say? Yeah,
you just like, "Hey, look, I ain't going to your house, but I'm not going to tell you why.
you're
You'll
right. A
find
lot,
out."
yeah. A lot of the time, I've as I've gotten into my Native American roots and religion, um, I had a coworker who asked me to come bless his house,
Mhm.
and they had a newborn baby, and they had video of the crib shaking at night, but nobody's there. There's nothing there. And he goes, "We've tried holy water, we've put up crosses, we've done everything, but we would be honored if you would come out and bless our home." So in in my religion, you're not supposed to like turn things down like that. You're supposed to take the journey. So I took the journey, and I sing in my language, I drum and sing, and I do a lot of stuff like that. So I packed up all my stuff and I went. And as I entered their house, I did have that feeling of like something is heavy. It's almost like humidity. It's like
Mm.
humidity without
Yeah.
the mugginess. You're just something's heavy on you. But I had that feeling, and I didn't really mince words. I just had him take me to the crib and the spot, and I blessed this room and the crib and everything like that. And I smudged the house off, and I smudged them off, and nothing ever came of it again. But seeing that crib shake video after video was, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong, right? If I go and I oppose something like that, does it come on to me, or am I light enough to take this away? And
Mm.
I've been asked a few different times to do things in that manner, and it's it's always unnerving. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm sure because you've seen
Yeah,
some of the
yeah,
worst parts of it.
hmm
Now, so as we get here towards the end, I know there is one more story, right? That
sure, yeah,
I want you to share. I want you to share that one as the
sure,
as we end this, because I think that's one that is going to give some people
sure.
a little pause.
So when I began my journey as a young indigenous person and got into the culture and stuff, my first sweat lodge, I had weird visions when I was inside of it. Thunder and lightning was hitting around my feet, and I was running through the grass. And I didn't understand what that was until later on. But my first sweat lodge, and that's where you go out and you purify yourself. And the representation of it is you're going back into Mother Earth's womb and you're coming out cleansed. It's church for Native American men.
Okay, I got you.
Um, I go to Sweat Lodge and I have this really weird vision, and I'd seen stuff in there, and it was really powerful and very sacred. And we get done with it, and I'm about 17 at the time, very strong, played football. I was an all-state football player, all-conference football player. If it's a football accolade, I have it. And not to toot my own horn, but just the person I am. I get home and it's about 9 o'clock at night, and I reek of smoke and fire and sweat and sweaty men. And I get ready for bed and I take a shower and I get my stuff together, and I'm like reflecting upon the ceremony. And I walk downstairs and everybody is already in bed. So I said, I'll make a peanut butter jelly and eat it and go to bed. Well, my room was up in the attic of this house in North Dakota. And I'm living with my dad at the time now. And he's a police officer. And I eat my sandwich, and my stairs are real creaky. You go upstairs and my room's like off to the right. Well, my light is outside of my door. So to shut off my bedroom light is like open the door and close the light and shut the door. So I go to bed and I open the door, and as I open the door to shut off the light, it snatched my wrist and pulled me forward. This is another time where I was pretty terrified. I reared back and I slammed my door closed, and I have like this little flicker light in my room, and I flicked it on just so I could see enough. I grab my buck knife and I come out because I'm thinking somebody has got to be in my house. That can't be my little sister. My dad's already in bed. My stepmom is snoring on the side of him. There's nobody else in my house. So I come out with my knife, ready to go to war or whatever you call it, and there's nobody there. There's nothing there. My little sister's room is like to this way, so I like put my knife away, and I'm like, oh, she must have got me good and scared me or something. I go downstairs and I walk into the basement, and she is passed out between my parents, and they're all asleep. There's nobody else awake in the house. And I always explain it, but I was like 6'5", 250 pounds at the time, can bench like 300 pounds and squatted like 500. Whatever it was grabbed me by the wrist and pulled me forward. Nothing fell down there. I even thought maybe like my backpack was over here and maybe it like caught my arm or something.
Yeah.
There was nothing there. And in that house too, there was footsteps and a lot of weird stuff there too. But that was another crazy one.
Footsteps are one thing, but actually physically getting jerked. And I'm not going to encourage people to do this, but if you see a dude 6'5" at 250 pounds, go up and yank his arm and see, if you can, because I can imagine you think, oh my God, somebody is been waiting on me, is trying to rob us or kill us or do whatever, and they got a whole, I can't even imagine. So, so do you think that you going through that ceremony took whatever was in the house to another level? Like, were you that much more open? Or did it see you maybe as a threat? Did it see you as somebody it could contact? I mean, what was your thoughts behind that?
Well, being what I've been through, I think there couldn't have probably been a better person it chose. Like I said, there was a lot of weird things that happened in that house. I had a medicine bag that would swing itself on my wall, and I would stop it and it would keep swinging. And I brought my friends over and I was like, go ahead and stop that. And they would stop it, and then it'd keep swinging. I had owls that would perch itself above my neighbor's house, and it would stare into my window at night when I would go to bed. Certified. And for us in my culture, that's like an owl is like a messenger, or somebody is going to die, like something bad is going to happen. But yeah, I don't know if it opened something up, but the first sweat lodge I had was a very powerful one. I think maybe some of that energy had kind of came with,
Gotcha.
and it was scary, but it also felt like, maybe something was trying to tell me something, and I just wasn't picking up on it. And what I realized is, I had like this kind of vision in the sweat lodge, and the thunder and the lightning is hitting around my feet, and I'm running through the prairie grass. And I realized later on I was running from myself. I never faced my own issues myself. So I wonder if maybe that was kind of attached to the ceremony I had been through. And oddly enough, the vision I had in the sweat lodge, I talked to my medicine man who ran that sweat lodge later on, said, look, this is what I seen. I don't know what it means. And he looked at me and smiled, and he, smiled and took a puff off his cigarette. And he told me, he goes, we built this sweat lodge with the thunder beings and the lightning beings for our tribe. And he goes, so it's interesting. That's the first thing you've seen while you're in here.
So it was almost like you running and those beings with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But like I said, I had a very tumultuous childhood from my mother to my father. I didn't talk to my mother's side of my family for like 7 years at this point, and really grew as a person. But when I went to Sweat Lodge, I think it was telling me, you need to fix the circle,
Yeah. Wow, that's some powerful stuff. Wow.
Yep.
Well, Cobb, I am thankful that you reached out to share this stuff. I am, I feel blessed that, people feel comfortable enough to come and sit and tell some of these things that they may have not told a lot of people, and to just share your story and give kind of hope to other people who may be going through some of the same stuff, that they're not alone.
Yep.
And because think about, at your age, probably there weren't podcasts where you could go and hear other people talk about that. And most people were like poo-pooed it, like, oh, that's not real. So it truly is a blessing to have people like you come on and share these experiences. And then from the Native American viewpoint of it, because I think that is so important here in our, where we are, that is a viewpoint that we should look at a lot of things through. I agree. I truly believe that. So I am, I'm thankful that you came on. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm hoping we can get your dad back on.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you guys back on and hear some more stuff. So
for sure.
So, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing this stuff. I'm hoping that people enjoy this episode and are, feel something.
Awesome. Very good.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
God only knows what's hiding